Well, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here this evening. It's an honor to have you all here tonight as we dive into a topic that I would argue is both timely and deeply impactful when you think about education, empowering Latinx educators. So today's session is all about recognizing the power of representation, celebrating the contributions of Latinx educators, and exploring strategies to create more equitable and inclusive learning environments. So together, after tonight, I'll call it a success if we're able to walk away with a clear understanding how we can make impact out of the gate. So to guide our conversation together tonight, I'm basically going to walk you through this agenda. I'll do a quick introduction on myself, and then I'll jump right into grounding why this topic even matters. And then the meat of our conversation will be our teacher panel discussion, which I'm excited to participate. And then I'll be ending uh, by giving an overview of our program that we offer here at City Teaching Alliance. And then finally, we'll open it up for questions and have some two-way dialogue as we round out the presentation. So I'll just jump right in. So a little bit about myself. I will preface by saying I am not an educator. I have been in human resources for longer than I want to admit. My career started in the Marine Corps, did that for about 8 years, and then transitioned into corporate human resources until the pandemic hit. And that was when I had a moment of clarity on what I really wanted to do when I grow up. And so, as a father of two boys, my youngest happened to be
Pushing
born,
it down close.
happened to be born premature. And so, even though I wasn't a teacher, his first few years in working with the education system was always a challenge. And fortunately for me, he's now 20 years old. He's healthy. But I didn't have a good experience, and it stuck with me throughout my corporate career. And so, fortunately, there was an opportunity here at City Teaching Alliance to utilize the experience that I had built over the last 15 years to attract people like all of you in different stages of your life, whether it's from university or doing a career transition or even at the latter part of your career, and help you through this process of understanding our program. And so tonight, I'm hoping we'll provide you another layer of understanding on what we do, why we do it, and I'll have my contact information after. I'll also be managing the chat here. So if I pause periodically, I apologize beforehand. But let's just jump right in. So grounding on the why. I think that's the most important aspect of this conversation tonight. But let's begin by acknowledging, a crucial aspect of our education system, which is representation. And we believe here at City Teaching Alliance that the diversity of our educators in our classrooms play a critical role in shaping not only the academic success of students, but also the culture of inclusion and equity within our schools. So let's talk a little bit more about that. So just to set the stage here, I'm not going to read this line by line, but one of the most powerful ways we can transform education is by recognizing the importance of representation in the classroom, as well as Latinx educators who play an important and essential role in this type of transformation. And if you're new to this, some of you may be asking, well, why does this even matter? Because their presence, from the studies that we've received and we've researched, their presence has a profound impact on student outcomes. Not only student outcomes, but school culture and the overall success of our education system. So here on the slide, I broke it down into two key areas that have the biggest impact when we think about representation. Improved academic achievement and enhanced cultural understanding. Let me pause here and just make sure everyone admitting people here. Starting with academic achievement. So Latin educators serve as relatable role models, as do all teachers, but especially for Latin and other minority students. And I'm confident all of us have heard that when students see themselves reflected in their teachers, it creates a sense of connection and belonging. But this connection isn't just emotional. It actually has measurable academic benefits. Studies show that schools within the Latinx educators experience higher levels of student engagement, experience better attendance, and even improved test scores. So what is the secret? It's culturally relevant teaching practices. So Latinx educators bring their lived experiences into the classroom, creating lessons that resonate with students' identities and help them feel seen and valued. And that sense of validation is a game changer when you think about closing the achievement gaps. Now, when you think about cultural understanding, Latinx educators bring a wealth of perspectives that can enrich the learning environment for everyone, not just Latin students, but their peers as well. And so by promoting inclusion and introducing diverse viewpoints, they help all students appreciate the beauty and the complexity of cultural diversity. And this honestly just doesn't create better students. It creates better citizens who are more empathetic and equipped to thrive in a very interconnected global world. And this kind of inclusive environment benefits everyone, making schools more equitable and preparing students to navigate and succeed in diverse communities. So, what does the data tell us? Because when you look at that data, the numbers don't necessarily reflect the need. And so, one key statistic that I pulled out for this presentation that comes from the National Education Association that says only 9% of K through 12 teachers identify as Latinx or Latin or Hispanic, comparing that to 28% of the student population that considers themselves part of the Latinx community. So that 9 versus 28%, that's a huge gap. And so the data is clear. Schools that have Latinx educators show improved academic performance, stronger cultural understanding. And so addressing this disparity isn't just important, we feel it's urgent. And so by increasing the presence of our Latin educators in our schools, we're not just helping students academically, we're creating classrooms that celebrate diversity, fostering inclusion, and preparing students for a more equitable future. So this is really the foundation of our discussion today, recognizing the critical role of Latin educators and how we are building a path forward to empower them. So shifting gears a little bit, I'd like to just turn our focus to the power of community in education. In particularly, we're exploring the ways in which the diversity within the Latin community and the strength of collective representation can transform educational spaces. So the slide that you're looking at now, it highlights three key areas: recognizing the diversity within Latinx communities, understanding why representation matters, and creating inclusive and supportive spaces for educators. So, starting with recognizing diversity within the Latinx community, to truly empower the Latinx educator, we must first acknowledge the vast diversity within the Latin community. If you're Latino or Hispanic, Chicano, Boricua, you'll understand what that means. But our Latinx communities are rich in cultural, linguistic, and geographic diversity. Within these communities, last year I gave a presentation on Afro-Latina individuals, but you have indigenous Latinx individuals and many more that have their own unique identities and experiences that can enrich the broader community. So just it doesn't mean you have to know all of that, but just recognizing that it isn't as simple as putting people in buckets. The Latin community encompasses so many different cultures and linguistics, like I mentioned before. Even those that don't speak Spanish have their own lane. And so this type of understanding and preparing our educators to understand this dynamic is vital to ensure that no one's left behind and to ensure that our efforts create that type of equitable educational space. And so by honoring this diversity means providing the tools and resources necessary to meet the specific needs of every student and educator. Representation, it's a cornerstone of empowerment. Increasing the presence of Latin educators in our school systems ensures that students have relatable role models who reflect their own identities and experiences. But representation goes beyond the numbers. It's about integrating culturally relevant curriculums and teaching practices. So when students see their histories, their language, their traditions respected and celebrated in the classroom, it fosters a deeper connection in their education experience and enhances their academic and personal growth. And then finally, to sustain this momentum, we need to focus on creating these inclusive and supportive environments for the Latinx educators themselves. And then this really starts by fostering professional networks, mentoring opportunities that help educators thrive in their role, and building these connections empowers Latinx educators and ensures that they have the tools and support needed to succeed. And and of course, we also need to encourage collaboration, not just within Latin communities, but within Latinx educators and their allies. So by recognizing this diversity, increasing representation, and building inclusive, supportive spaces, we can harness the power of community or alliances to create a stronger, more equitable education system for all. And honestly, the goal isn't just to empower individual educators, but to create a ripple effect that transforms the schools and uplifts the community. So transitioning over to how we prioritize equity in education, like I mentioned before, it isn't just a goal, it's a commitment, a commitment to ensure that every student has the opportunity to succeed. Hold on one second and make sure I admit everybody here. Um, so equity in education, achieving this requires it doesn't just happen. We need to be deliberate in how we focus on pursuing equity in education and focus on culturally responsive teaching. So the slide that I'm showing here, it really highlights three key strategies: equipping educators with tools for culturally responsive teaching, empowering educators to become advocates for equity, and building meaningful partnerships with families and communities. And I'm speaking for myself, I think, in terms of meaningful partnerships with the families and communities, especially within the Latin communities, can have a huge difference in a student's overall experience in their classrooms. So let's start with culturally responsive teaching. To truly prioritize equity, we need to equip educators with strategies to incorporate students' cultural backgrounds into the learning process. This means by integrating students' lived experiences, their traditions, their values into lessons plans. It helps to create an environment where they feel seen and understood. Bilingual and bicultural education is also a powerful tool. By promoting these practices, we not only foster academic growth, but also empower students to take pride in their identities, preparing them for success both inside and outside the classroom. In terms of advocacy, educators, especially Latinx educators, are in a unique, hold on one second here. I can't tell if people are getting let in or not. Apologize. Let me see here. Yeah, it looks like they're in. Sorry. Where was I? Okay, so culturally responsive teaching. So to truly prioritize equity, we need to equip educators with strategies to incorporate their backgrounds into the learning process. And like I just mentioned, trying to incorporate their traditions and values into the lessons plans is one way to create an environment where they feel seen and understood. Um, let's talk about advocacy. Educators, especially Latinx educators, are in a unique position to advocate for equity. Training Latinx educators to champion equitable curriculum design, inclusive school policies, and broader systemic change ensures that their voices are heard at decision-making tables. But advocacy just doesn't stop in the classroom. It extends to engaging with the broader community to amplify Latin voices in educational reform. And this is, how we move from addressing inequities to eliminating them entirely. And even in my role in HR and recruitment, we spend a lot of time building those community relationships. I keep getting a pop. Okay, here we go. And then lastly, equity thrives when schools, families, and communities work together. Strengthening ties between schools and Latin families, create a support system that directly benefits student access and success. Additionally, partnerships with community organizations bring valuable resources and support into the schools. So these collaborations enrich the educational experience and ensure students and educators have the tools they need to thrive. So it's very evident prioritizing equity in education requires a multifaceted approach by fostering culturally responsive teaching, empowering educators as advocates, and building strong partnerships with families and communities. When these elements come together, we create a system that not only values diversity, but actively works to uplift and empower every student and educator. So, enough about me talking. Now we want to move into the meat of this conversation and why probably most of you are here. Um, I'm pretty excited and having the opportunity to engage with our panel today. We've been fortunate enough to have three of our educators volunteer their time to come and answer a few questions that I've presented to them before the call. Um, but I'd love to get their feedback as we're having this dialogue. But real quickly, if you don't mind, panelists, if you could just quickly introduce yourselves, maybe your name, um, why you chose City Teaching Alliance, and where you're teaching today.
I can go ahead and start. My name's Sabrina Gomez. So I was originally part of the 2018 cohort here in Dallas. Um, I am going into this is my seventh year teaching, which is now crazy. Um, I feel so old now. I finally have teachers who are not just younger than me, but they're younger than my younger sister. So this is the first year that I have felt very old. But this year I am teaching first grade, and I'm actually a multi-classroom leader teacher. So I spend half my time in the classroom, half my time coaching. Um, and then I also am a host teacher this year for a City Teaching Alliance resident. Um, so that's me. This is my first year at my current campus, but the last 6 years I was at my placement campus. So where I was placed as a resident, I was there for 6 years. The move mainly came with this position not being available at the school I was at. Um, so which has been really great back when I was like, it seems so long ago, but basically I was a junior in college and I was studying abroad and I did a teaching internship in Austria. And I had originally planned to be like, oh, I'm going to be a music teacher and ended up loving teaching so much more. And I was teaching different subjects in English because I was working with high school at the time. Um, and so they were pretty much all fluent in English. But so I was teaching different subjects in English. I was like, this is really great. So then I got back to the States and I was like, well, I'm a music major, no intentions of teaching. So now I'm going to look at some different programs. And that's how I found City Teaching Alliance originally. And I always tell people, even now, like it is truly the best program that I feel like I could have found and that like found me. And I really attribute a lot of my like teaching success um, to being a City Teaching Alliance alumni. I feel like it really very much has shaped not just my teaching practice in terms of like getting kids to learn to read and learn math, but just also a lot of the things we've talked about with cultural relevancy and just how to relate to all my kiddos and such. But yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Sabrina. Time flies definitely when you're having fun. So I can testify to
Yes.
that. What about JJ? Uh,
Yes, hi everyone. My name is JJ Gaitan. JJ stands for Jose Juan, but I've been called JJ ever since I was a kid, so I go by JJ. I am part of the most recent cohort in DC. I am originally from McAllen, Texas. That's part of the Rio Grande Valley, down at the bottom by South Padre Island. Um, I moved to DC about 3 years ago. I earned my bachelor's in theater, so I actually came up here with a theater apprenticeship, and it was at a theater here in Bethesda, Maryland. It's a children's theater called Imagination Stage, and they had a branch there dedicated to displaying like Latinx stories, and the program was called Oyame. And so I got to like shadow some of the classes, the workshops, even some of the rehearsals, and then I got to lead some, and that's exactly where I fell in love with teaching. I was like, wow, I think I like being around kids. I like teaching kids. I like this vibe, this energy. And so I started looking for programs, kind of similar to Sabrina, in her journey. I was looking for programs and I kind of got my foot in the door with a daycare. And then from there, I started looking for more programs until I stumbled upon CTA. And it's been such an incredible journey with CTA. Um, I feel like we're one big family. We all have similar journeys. And luckily for me, I got to stay at my host school, so I didn't need to travel far. And it's been great. It's been great learning the different ropes and building my toolkit. So yeah, I'm so glad that you guys are all here and can't wait to get to know you guys more.
Awesome, awesome, and welcome. I can relate to the abbreviated names. My actual names is Avil Jose Quesada Davila, so AJ. Another interesting fact, I spent like 3 years in Corpus Christi, Texas, so very familiar with South Padre Island. Um, and last but certainly not least, Karina.
Hey everyone. Just as everyone and the three names, I go by Karina. In El Paso, I go by Garena, Garina. I've been called all different, but I am Karina Delgado. I am part of cohort 2023 in Dallas, meaning that I am a first year full on teacher of record, as well as going to graduate this spring. So super excited. I currently teach 10th grade English, and I am actually the first in my district to teach 11th grade ESL. That being because I work in a charter school and we follow like the IB program, if anybody is familiar with that. Basically, it is like college courses for students, but because of such the big like ESL EB population, we now opened up a course and I am the first teacher to teach it in my district. So it's been a crazy first year. But yes, I joined CTA because I have an educational background. My undergrad, I was majoring in English and minoring in secondary education at El Paso. And honestly, I was too comfortable. People all around me looked like me. If you know El Paso, it's right next to the border by Juarez. And so everyone looked like me. We all spoke Spanish. And I realized at that point that I was not ready to get into the education system because I didn't know how to teach all students. And just like Sabrina said, CTA found me. I was currently like looking for what I could do. Of course, I could jump into the classroom, but I just wasn't ready. And CTA found me, and we just connected automatically with our mission statement. To try and eliminate racial inequity in classrooms is huge. And I just needed to learn more about how to be a whole rounded educator. So they pushed for me. I moved out to Dallas and here I am loving it. And I'm super excited for you guys to get to know more about City Teaching Alliance and its mission.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Sounds like you're paving the way out there, which is awesome. And for those of you who are newer to City Teaching Alliance, you may have heard us refer to us as CTA. So internally, we get used to calling us CTA, but it's the same thing. I just wanted to clarify that. But the good news is you can clearly see you've got a wide range of experience as it relates to the program. So I'm excited to jump into the questions. So thank you for the introductions. So the first question that I have is really focused on, you touched a little bit about your journey and your motivation. But was there a defining moment in your career, whether it was an educator who inspired you, your heritage, where your identity as a Latin educator shaped your experience for students or colleagues? And we can popcorn this out. So, JJ, you look like you're ready to rock and roll. That I don't know if you have any feedback there.
Yes. So I guess I can start at my first year of teaching, actual general education. My first year teaching was in seventh grade math, and I wasn't a teacher, but I was a tutor. I was part of this program that brought in tutors to push into the classrooms to teach small group math. And so I started out there, and I was partnered with the host teacher. And the first day of school, I just remember being like, wow, these are some seventh graders. I remember being in seventh grade. I know how everyone is kind of like teen angst. And so I was just ready to be eaten up by all these seventh graders. But I looked around at everyone in the classroom and I remember seeing, a lot of black and brown students. And I remember feeling comfortable because I am a person of color. And so I was just like, okay, I think we could have a little bit of relatability there. And so when I introduced myself, the kids called me Mr. G. And I was like, hi, y'all, I'm Mr. G. I'm here to help, your teacher teach you some math. It's very important because math makes the world go round. I would also like to say that I am proudly Mexican American. También hablo español. So if you ever need something or if you ever need to communicate with me in Spanish, I can, relate to you on that aspect. And at the end of introducing myself, I can see like a lot of kids smiling and the kind of like holding a sense of pride as well, being able to relate to one of their teachers in the classroom. And I also feel like it earned me some street cred with the students. So as the year went on, a lot of the kids, began to feel more comfortable connecting with their teachers, and they also got to gain a lot more confidence in building their math skills and stuff like that. So it was really important to, outwardly say that. And I see it in my students. Even now, I teach in Spanish sometimes, and I can see my kids relating to the content a little bit more just because there's that aspect of relatableness between me and them. So that was something cool that I got to experience.
Awesome, awesome. What about Sabrina or Karina? Anything unique in your journey that inspired you?
I definitely think my last campus was a very different demographic than my current campus. So the last campus I was at for about 80 for the last 6 years, about 80% of our kiddos identifies as Black, and then about 20% were Hispanic or Latinx. Um, and so it was definitely very different from where I am now, where it's the complete opposite, where almost 90% of my kiddos are Hispanic. But being at my last campus, it was definitely always very interesting because I was one of or the only Hispanic teacher besides the Spanish teacher.
Mm.
And so it was definitely like very interesting. I don't speak Spanish, but of course, like the light's kind of weird in here, but I look Hispanic. My last name's Gomez. It was my like first week as a resident teacher, and one of the parents comes up. She starts talking to me in Spanish. Of course, I'm like, no habla español. And then I say it correctly with an accent, and they're like looking at me even more crazy. But she's like, "Oh, is your last name from your husband?" No, no, it's not. It's mine. Um, has been mine. But even though that has been a case, I found like once I like actually had gotten into it, we had a lot of um Spanish speaking parents or like mainly Spanish speaking parents who I found that they would still talk to me. I would have other teachers who just our other teachers who weren't Hispanic, who they were like, I can't get them on the phone, or like when they come, like they won't really talk to me. And I'm like, and they're like, do they only speak Spanish? I'm like, they speak English. I'm like, I do not speak Spanish. Like, they'll come, they speak English to me. And so I found like, even though like I didn't have the connection of being able to speak the language, just the connection of like also being Hispanic and like taking the time to like just listen. Like, I'm a very fast talker, as you probably can already tell, but I definitely slow down. My grandparents both speak Spanish and they're from Argentina. And so that's like I had learned like since the grandkids didn't speak Spanish, like they speak to us in English. And so like I learned like, oh, I need to slow down. And so like I found like even though I like didn't have that connection of the language, like I had that connection from like my experience with my grandparents and also just like being able to connect also being Hispanic, like made it go a lot further. And so I was able to reach a lot of those kids and their families just from like how I identified. So that definitely was like a pretty big deal when like I had that like moment when I first started teaching.
Thank you, Sabrina. I can definitely relate. I don't speak fluent Spanish, sort of choppy, but I understand it experience so well. Karina, I think I seen you agree as well.
Yes, to jump into like all of these combos. For me, I've always wanted to be a teacher. I have an aunt who's a teacher, and I just knew it was something I've always wanted to do. But I would work full time while I was in college, also as a full-time student, and I used to do business. So as I mentioned, El Paso is just so Hispanic. Like it's normal to talk and not talk Spanish that I got the opportunity to come out to Dallas and open up a store at the time that I was doing in business. And I was only here for like about a month or two. But I used to work in the side of Oak Cliff, if anybody is familiar in the Dallas area. And it is primarily like probably 90% black in the neighborhood. You have some spots of Hispanic, but it's a black neighborhood. So whenever Latinx like customers would walk in the door, they automatically try to speak English. So they didn't even try and start with their language. It was just straight English. And you could tell that they were struggling. So like right away, I'd be like, oh, hola, buenas tardes in Spanish. And the look on their face is like very, very humbling because it's like they're so grateful to have somebody who speaks the language or who can understand them. And to me, I knew that I needed to teach in Dallas. Right away, I said, if this is like the population and like the relief, I don't like it's a luxury. It's not a luxury in El Paso because we all speak it. But in a place where we don't, I just was like super motivated. And I'm like, I need to come and teach in a city like this that is so diverse because it will make a difference. And it did. Like, as soon as I entered my school building, like Sabrina, I was the only Hispanic teacher besides the Spanish department. And just with my last name, students automatically were like, "Oh, do you speak Spanish, miss?" Like, "Oh, you're from El Paso. Like, where have you gone to Juarez?" And with those experiences, I was like 10 steps ahead of everyone already in terms of relationship building. Day one, they're like, "Oh my God, yeah, like we can relate." And just like JJ also, like you also start to feel comfortable and like it gives you street cred because they're like, "Oh, she knows me at least. She looks like my sister. She can talk like my cousin." So just with all of those little tiny experiences, like I realized that we do need representation in schools and especially like in big cities like DC, Maryland, Dallas, like it's so motivating. And that kind of just inspired me to go all in.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you, thank you. So it sounds like language could be a barrier or an opportunity. But when you think about you as a Latinx educator, were there any other unique challenges that you faced outside of maybe language or being the only one in a group or a classroom being Latinx? And how did you overcome them? And anyone can jump in.
Yeah, I think like it's such a loaded question, but I honestly don't think any of the like big struggles, like once you can kind of work with like beyond the language barrier, like being the only Latinx educator, I feel like the other struggles that come along are mainly from being in like high need schools. One big thing, like I noticed this year, because I have so many more Spanish speaking families, one of the other teachers on my campus who taught first grade for before she became an interventionist was like, "Hey, tell your parents they can read in any language because in first grade, that's when they learn to read." Um, like, but they just need to read in any language. And the amount of parents who I had like reach back out who'd be like, "Thank you so much for letting me know like we can read in Spanish at home because there's no one at home to read with them in English." So things like that where it's like you don't even know always what's going on at home, just in general, whether it's things like that. I feel like sometimes the only other thing I saw is just like making sure we continue to have that representation at my last campus, even though the population was very different. I always felt like we had so many things going on later in the school year for different heritage months. And partially because like Hispanic Heritage Month is so early in the school year, but also because there was not teachers of that demographic, there was not anything happening. Like after my residency year, there was one other Hispanic teacher. He was a resident in the cohort after me. And I was like, we're planning some stuff. We need to make a list because we do all this stuff in the spring and we do nothing in the fall. And this is not it. So I feel like that was the only other big thing is being that there wasn't a lot of teachers to take who are like, oh, hey, we know Hispanic Heritage Month is happening. Oh, hey, we like can go ahead and do it. um there wasn't teachers who were like taking that on to plan those things for our kiddos so they can see that representation. So I
Mhm.
feel like that's the only other big thing I saw that kind of related to being one of the only like Hispanic teachers. But beyond that, I feel like it's just more so the things of like we're serving kids in high need schools and everything that kind of comes along with that as well.
Got it.
I'm gonna jump in here for me, and it's something that I'm like going through right now and like have been seeing as I'm like day to day in school and in class. For me, it's data. So it is like, especially right now with like the Latinx population and people coming from all over, the data is still so new that the numbers do not represent us, they don't represent us like as a whole. So we still have thousands and thousands of people coming in into our classrooms who have only been in the US for 6 months. And being a Latinx educator, it's so hard because we want to do what's best for our students, but it's just so data related that it's like that's number one. But also number two, y'all, Latinx community getting their masters, men and female, it is huge. Like we're on the rise, but we still have so much to go. So I feel like just even beating that number personally, there's just so many things that I carry that it's like, can I do this? No one in my family has ever done this. And it is something that like I'm overcoming and some obstacles, but at the end of the day,
Mm.
it's gonna be such a win for me and my family to come because you don't realize it, but you're breaking all these generational curses for yourself, for your students. And it's like you have to overcome the data and like overcome the stats and kind of prove that like us as a Latinx community can do that. So it's tough. It's a heavy lift, but at the same time, it's like so fulfilling.
Awesome, awesome. That's inspiring. You motivated me to pursue a PhD. What about you, JJ? How's DC? How's that experience?
Yeah, DC's pretty good. I will say for me, it still kind of relates to language, only because there isn't a lot of Latinx educators in my school. I think I'm probably one of the only ones actually trying to become a general education teacher. And some of the Latinx teachers that we have are just kind of like teacher assistants. And we only have maybe like two of them on our staff, but it does come down to language for me. Um, like Karina said, a lot of us are pursuing our masters, getting our degrees. I'm first generation, the first one in my family to actually have a degree in um, like earn my bachelor's, and now I'm earning my master's. So a lot of these fights, I'm like the first one to actually like pursue these head on. And for me, when I was in my school, a lot of it is just kind of like trying to figure out how to ask for a raise or ask for a promotion or ask for a stipend. Because when we think about it, like if we speak a second language, that should be valued. And I made it a point to my boss and I said, hey, like, I just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity. I speak Spanish and I can see there's a need for it. I was wondering if I could be, financially, you know, rewarded for that or something, or just ask for a small raise or a stipend, because it is a need in the school. And I feel like me teaching in Spanish is a value that not a lot of teachers have. And of course, I got denied respectively, and that was okay with me. But when it came time to like parent teacher conferences, when a lot of the Spanish speaking families only speak Spanish, they came to me and they started requesting for my assistance, and I professionally declined because at the end of the day, this is what I, you know, advocated for, and I got shut down a little bit. But also because there isn't a lot of like bilingual programs in school or bilingual resources like me, um, it's harder to close that gap for students who, have that need, and making sure to close that gap for their academic like achievements, or maybe it'll even reduce some of the opportunities for these kids that don't speak English. So I was just kind of advocating for some of my students who English is not their first language. And unfortunately, yes, it does. Even though I got shut down to be financially compensated, I still teach my kids in Spanish. Like that to me, that's just how I roll, how I want them to feel comfortable, and you know how I would want a teacher in my day and age to teach me. So at the end of the day, even though I didn't get financially compensated, um, I still teach these kids in Spanish. But there's a high need, and I was just trying to get them to recognize that for future teachers to come that are coming in and applying and are able to speak more than one language.
Thank you, thank you. So yeah, language is definitely in demand, it sounds like. And I know we touched a little bit about, community and advocacy. Um, how would, each of you, how do you build a sense of community within your schools? Maybe more so on the educator level. Is it something that you intentionally do today, or is there a future opportunity?
Yeah, I can go. I think building the community, it's like all the different levels, right? I feel like, of course, you want to build that classroom community. Like when kids feel safe, that's when they can learn the most. I can't expect my kids, if they think I don't like them, to like show up and listen and any of that. So I think like of course it starts there. Um, but I think like some of that expands, like you were saying, like it goes into like the teacher to teacher relationships as well. Like kids pick up on it. I said I was teaching first grade this year, but I taught fifth grade last year and third grade the year before. And especially because your kids become you. Ooh, especially when I had my last year, I taught those kids in fifth grade and I taught them 2 years prior in third grade. So some of them, I was like, yeah, you just said all the things that I was not allowed to say, but I know my face said it. Um, but even like they see you interact with other teachers and they're like, oh yeah, I know that you're friends with them. Like me and one of my coworkers were gone. They're like, did you guys go on a trip together? Yes, you nosy people. Yes, I did. But so they see that and they also like feed off of that because they're like, oh, I want to know like, oh, Miss Gomez is friends with the third grade teacher down the hall. Oh, okay, I'm gonna get that teacher in a few years or whatever it may be. And so they already start building those relationships with other teachers even like this year, I'm brand new to the school. There happens to be a kiddo who's in second grade who just, I was saying good morning to him every day when he was going by, and his cousin happens to be in another class in first grade. One day something happens, and I'm like, I see that you're in the hallway. What's going on? Now, every day, he's my bestie. He comes in the morning. He's so excited to see me. I'm like, I have not taught at this school. I don't know that like his family or anything, but they also see like, oh, I'm friends with his second grade teacher and those kinds of things. So I think that community also is really important because kids pick up on so much, even more than we know or want them to know. And so they know if you don't like someone, if you do like someone, and that plays into like them feeling comfortable with the other teachers as well. And then I feel like that just goes home as well. They're excited about like something they did with their classmates or another class, or they're like, oh my gosh, I get to go to this new second grade teacher next year, or whatever it is, because they're already knowing some of those teachers. So I do feel like having that community is really important because it gets the buy-in, not just for your kids, but for their families, like when they're going home and talking about school.
That's awesome, Sabrina. Just to piggyback off of what you said, I started off in seventh grade and then I moved over to the elementary side. I was working with a kid who is neurodivergent. So I got to have some experience in the special education department. And for this year, for my residency year, I'm in kindergarten. And so I will say to everyone that after your first year, you gain more confidence as you go along your journey. And that's where I am right now. I feel as confident as I could be in this school. And along my journey, I got to make a lot of friends. I got to meet a lot of students as well. And I feel like I'm just generally a nice person. So I will say good morning to everyone, the janitors, the lunch ladies, the front desk, everyone. And the kids see that. That's something that Sabrina mentioned, that the kids pick up on every little thing, even when we expect them or don't think that they do. Just the way that you interact with everybody. Um, they'll pick up on that. And so, because I've interacted with a lot of people, some people will stop by my classroom, say hi, and the kids will be like, Mr. G, who is that? And I'll introduce them. And so now they're a little bit more accustomed to who's in their school. And so, anytime they'll see that adult in the school, they'll say hi and they'll have more comfortability. And then they have another teacher to expect as they progress in their education. So, yeah, it's really cool that Sabrina touched on that. I also experienced that as well.
And lastly, for me, so I did not get to stay in my school that I got placed in. I actually had to move schools. And so that's two different schools, two different people, two different staff. And my best advice is number one, find your people. As soon as you are there on that orientation day, look around. Who you think like looks like you? You first need that community to feel safe and valued. And it's just kind of awesome to relate, like, oh, hey, and like be able to speak your Spanish. And if you don't, be able to just give information about yourself. But also, number two, like JJ said, like be a sponge and just start smiling at people, sit in the front. My first year as a resident, I was in everybody's classroom, whoever had the door open. I would get there early. I just pop my head in. hey, how are you? What are you doing? Asking questions. And like that, you start to become a very safe space for everyone. And now, just like JJ, like my door's always open. Random teachers will pop in, sit down, and just like kind of relax because that's like the atmosphere that you create. So just kind of be open to being friendly and like even as just like a career advice, it's okay to be new, but also you can like put yourself in these situations. You can walk up to the group that has five teachers there and introduce yourself, or something that really works is just ask a lot of questions. Why do you do that? How do you do that? Where'd you get that from? Like those little things open up the door to community. And as teachers, we need community.
Love it, love it. Thank you, thank you. So I know I want to be respectful of our panelists' time, so I thought I would take the time to open it up for questions. For those of you who would like to ask anything related to our program, the experience, I'll pause and let people sort of jump in. And if you're not comfortable, feel free to throw a chat too. I'd be happy to read it as well.
Hello, I'm Flynn.
Hello.
Um, do we need to travel to some of these places?
So yeah, so the question is, while you're in the program, is there a requirement to travel across multiple locations? Um, I can answer it, but I didn't know if one of you wanted to answer that.
I can answer it. So, as you are engaging into like the City Teaching Alliance profile, they ask you to rank your top, I think it's like your top three places where you would want to be placed at. So, I know we have Dallas, DC, Baltimore. So, if you choose one and you're placed there, no, you don't have to travel.
Did I answer your question, Fatima?
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Any other questions? I know a question I get a lot is, school doesn't start until August. Why do we start a program in June? What does that experience look like when we start in June?
Sorry, I'm like chuckling to myself. Um, I have no other way but to say is one, Summer Institute is going to be a shock to your system, but it's very good for you. You're going to get a lot of front load information for all of your like just teaching in general. And then you're going to get to start all of your coursework and start practicing and doing all those things. One of like the big things that I heard a ton my year, and I always tell teachers this, is basically you need to learn to be uncomfortable, like to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. One of the things that's always super weird is like role playing. You will get up, you will practice teaching, and depending what district you go to, you will continue to do that during your planning meetings with your team. Um, but you will get up and you'll be like, let me pretend to do my lesson, and all of the other residents there will be your students. That's probably the weirdest thing that people like have to learn to get comfortable with. But in all honesty, especially when it's lessons that we are actually going to do with our kids, I was always so happy that I had done it already. Because the first time you're doing, you're like, what am I doing? And especially if you're doing an entire lesson and it's one of your first times doing something with like your whole class, you're like, okay, I like just want to do all the things. And so you kind of get to have that time to like hammer it out, like what do you got to do um with all of that. And you'll find too, depending like what your district does, schools start before kids come back. So we're doing professional developments. It's going to range from new teacher training that every new teacher goes to for the district to your campus saying, hey, this is a need that our campus specifically has. We're going to work on this. And everyone here is going to do it. To what are like the goals of the campus. So just in general, not only do like we start early, but then you'll go to your campus because campuses will start before kids show up to prep and everything.
Awesome. Thank you. Um,
For me, since I actually moved from El Paso to Dallas, that summer also really helped me settle into a new place. So, moving into a new apartment, getting to know the city, all of like the traffic stops and stuff, that time from June to August, it was very life-saving because I was able to find a place, I was able to move in, I was able to relax and then like restart.
Can you go a little bit deeper on that? I had someone have a question about that experience. Was there, support services that were provided to you?
Yes, definitely. City Teaching Alliance helped me set up everything. They helped me find a roommate within the program. So like they set up socials, they set up meetings, they set up actually they have this thing called Experience Weekend where you get to come to Dallas for the weekend or wherever your site is, and you get to meet like the potential cohort. You get to tour apartments. You get to kind of get the feel for City Teaching Alliance. So I did that. I found a roommate, and then they also helped me find apartments. So they gave me a list of apartments, and I actually got a special discount with City Teaching Alliance. So I had a roommate. I had half off of rent, and during that time, I was also able to like collaborate with the people in my program of study. So I got to really get to know the people from high school in City Teaching Alliance. And by the time I started in August, I already had a community support. I had community, I had friends, and then I had the support with my coach and City Teaching Alliance, like professionals. So lots and lots of support.
So it
I
sounds
saw,
like,
oh,
sorry.
go ahead. No, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so it sounds like Summer Institute is rigorous but very much valued. Relocation, there's pretty extensive services to help that process through. During those first 2 years, as you're acclimating to everything, how is that balance between coursework and the training you're getting in the classroom? What does that look like?
Yeah, that's actually what I saw that in the chat.
Okay.
One big thing that I always tell people who are, whether you're considering the program, you're just starting the program, the first year is difficult. But it's to really prepare you to be a teacher and to be not just an educator for the next couple of years, a part of the program, but to be a lifelong educator. But that first year as a resident, I always describe it as you have two full-time jobs. You're going to school full time, like for your master's, but and then you're also working at a school full time. You, even though you're a resident and you don't have the whole class to yourself, you're still showing up every day to your class, working with your host teacher. You are internalizing the lessons. You are teaching. So you're not just like in the back, like observing and watching, like you are up, you are teaching. As someone who went through the program, I've had two residents, one with City Teaching Alliance, one with another, and I told them I was like, okay, so your first week, you are going to observe, and then I will let you pick the subject for the first court for like the first month and a half on which one you want to start with for like ELA or math, and we're gonna go because I want you to be as prepared as possible. Both my host teachers that I had when I was a resident were literally like, "Here you go, let's start teaching." Because the biggest thing about your residency year, what you will never have again, is someone in your classroom all the time who can give you feedback. Or, when you make small mistakes, can immediately jump in and be like, hey, actually, it's like this. Um, and that's something you just like, there's never going to be enough people at a school for someone to be in your room all the time, except when you're a resident and you're learning. It does take time to like find that work-life balance. Now, I am an old lady, as I like to call myself. I went to bed by 9 p.m. every night, even when I was a resident. And people were always like, how do you do that? I value my sleep. And so I just had to make it happen. And so you kind of just find, okay, what's going to work for me? Maybe that means you're a morning person. You do work like coursework before you head to school. You take some time on the weekend. You do some when you get home. So I won't lie, it is a lot. Like to be truthful and honest, you really have to find that balance between your coursework for your master's and your responsibilities at your campus, but it really truly does prepare you because everything's really front loaded to onto us as residents that first year. That way, when you go into the second year and you actually now are in charge of the kids by yourself, you have less coursework, but you've also done all that front loading of like all of the kind of theory and the practice of all of those things. So you're prepared as you go into that fellow year, and you're finishing your master's.
Thank you. Thank you. So I know we're at 6:30. I want to be respectful of the panelists. I'm going to hang out for another 15 minutes to go over the program and get a little more granular on that. Any last comments or anything you want to share with the group here, panelists, as a takeaway?
Friends, I just want to say that if your passion is education, please continue pursuing it. If you're going to do this for the rest of your life, might as well join this program because you're going to be earning your master's and your certifications in general education and special education. And it is a great way to get some practical teaching in while getting coaching, while getting mentoring in as well. This program is amazing. I completely encourage everyone to continue with this program. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Same
Ah,
thing as JJ. If you are passionate in teaching and you want to make a difference in students' life, please continue and start like researching CTA, ask questions. CTA has been very, very great to me. I have been able to like just having that on my back and on my record and on my resume, it puts me 10 steps ahead from other first year new teachers. Because why? Because we learn how to take care of kids mentally, emotionally, and it's a very, very hard job as education is, but it's very fulfilling. So please, if you guys have any like questions, let us know. I'm sure that all three of us are always available if you need some help. But if you guys are coming to Dallas, you have two in here.
thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely like can say nothing but good things. Like I have loved the program. I mean, I'm 3 years out now of being like like being an alumni, like going into my seventh year teaching, and like I still do things with the program. I'm still like very heavily involved with all different kinds of things for City Teaching Alliance. And so I have had nothing but good experiences. And yes, like the work is hard, but if you want to be an educator, like this is a great program to be a part of. And if you want to like learn more specifically, I know like at least for sure in Dallas, I've like hosted people when they wanted to come visit. They're like, I don't want to wait longer. And so like they've talked to their recruiter and they have people like who will be like, hey, do we have any Dallas ambassadors or other people like can they come to your campus? Can they come check it out? So don't be afraid to ask about the whichever location you want to go to. Be like, hey, can I connect with someone one-on-one to get more information? Because there's plenty of us here who are more than happy to talk to you, not just like at Dallas and DC, but at Baltimore and Philadelphia too, if that's where you're wanting to go. But yes, I hope everyone enjoyed it.
Yes, yes. Thank you again for dedicating your time. I know you're all very busy. You're more than welcome to jump off, or you could sit around and hear my presentation on our program. But thank you again. So moving on, let's jump in. I know some of you I've spoken to prior to this meeting, some of you have not. But if this is the first time, basically I'm going to go through what our program entails. And if it wasn't evident in our conversation, City Teaching Alliance, aka CTA, we're deeply committed to empowering educators, fostering diversity, and addressing inequities in education. And that's evident in everything that we designed in our program. And so everything has been systematically designed to make sure that we're hitting on all of those points. So I love this presentation because I'm a visual person. It helps me synthesize the data. But if you see the four columns here, it's almost like your journey is progressively moving up. And so this is a 4-year journey. Starts in June of every year. On average, anywhere between 50 plus new cohorts start in each of our four locations. And every program starts the same way as a resident. As you heard before, you heard the term used Summer Institute. And so basically what that means is the experience from when you start in June up until when class is back in session in maybe mid-August, September. But that first year residency is all about working alongside one of our experienced host teachers and incrementally position you to be able to start teaching in the second year. So at a very high level, when you think about our program, it's 1 year residency, 3 years direct teaching. So once you've graduated, you'll have your master's, you'll be fully credentialed, and you'll have 3 years teaching experience out of the gate. Um, Moving on to this slide. So we touched a little bit about it, but these are the four locations. Each community is a little bit different. Some people make decisions to relocate for a variety of reasons. Some are financial, lower cost of living. Others are just access to people in their own family, their own networks. But in either scenario, depending on where you reside, if you do reside out of the vicinity of these locations and you're accepted, we do provide relocation assistance, as you heard, and we do have community partners that work with us to identify, reasonable housing that's not only cost effective but is safe as well. And then secondly, to add to that, we do a lot of activities to try to bridge new cohorts into communities. And so a lot of our focus is making those connections so that by the time you start, and even through those first few weeks, you start to feel like you're already part of the family. That's a huge, I think, benefit into how we assimilate new cohorts into our program. Moving on, that's pretty much it. So I will open it up and see if anyone else has any questions. No other questions. We either hit every point really well, or we have some shy folks here. Awesome, awesome. Well, if there's no other questions, I go ahead.
I have a question. I went to school. I got my bachelor's already, and so the program is basically just like if you're going student teaching, getting all the hands-on experience.
I would say that and then some. So our program is inclusive of the training and the everything that we just discussed, but you're also getting your master's in teaching from American University, and you're also getting dual certified. So we do offer three teaching certifications that you can pick two out of the three. Um, so when you think about it, what you're walking away with is your master's degree, your dual teaching certification, and then the 3 years of actual tangible teaching experience that you'll add on your resume. And all of it is tied together. So it's not like an a la carte. Everything is sort of connected with each other. So if you don't have ambitions to earn a master's, this is probably not the right program. But since you've already finished it, why not take that leap and build that into the plan? Did
Yes,
that
sir.
did
Yeah,
I
that
answer?
answered my question. Yes, because yeah, I have teacher experience because last year I worked for Dallas ISD, and I was a math teacher. I was taught eighth grade and ninth grade algebra and geometry.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we love to get individuals who have that experience. Even though you've taught, you'll likely learn a lot of new different strategies and tactics in managing the classroom. I'd love to, if anyone here wants to go into a little bit deeper and have more of a one-on-one conversation, this QR code should connect you to myself. We do have our next application deadline coming up next week. And so if you would like to try to get into the next round of interviews, you would want to get your applications in before that date. We will reopen it, but then the interviews will, be pushed out a little bit. So I always encourage people to apply early as soon as possible. Any other questions? Because I don't want to stare at my face for so long.
There's two rounds of interviews, right?
Yeah, so in the perfect world, so our admissions team typically reviews all of our applications every Wednesday and makes decisions on who they'd like to bring forward with a phone interview. If you do really well on the phone interview, it's about 45 minutes. Then you would be invited to, it's about a 90-minute Zoom interview where you'll have an opportunity to meet a couple of sometimes they're faculty members, sometimes they're people like myself, but it would be a two-panel interview via Zoom. However, I will preface there are times when, based on what you put on your application, for whatever reason, admissions just accelerates the process and they will bring you straight to Zoom interview. So that could happen as well. And that honestly, since I have everyone here, the biggest drop-off rate that I see is really during the application process. And one of the number one reasons I see people just losing out on an opportunity is using AI consistently throughout the application. So just wanted to plant that seed if you are planning to apply. Um, it's all about just getting to know you more. What inspired you to be an educator? Why do you think this program would add value in that pursuit to teaching? So it's not complicated. Definitely take your time, but it's all about getting to know you more. From a prerequisite perspective, as long as you have your bachelor's degree before the end of June, you're eligible for this year cohort that starts, and a GPA of 2.5 or above, and of course citizenship. Any other questions, comments? Awesome. Well, if again, my QR code, I hope if you're interested in learning more, we'll continue to host these webinars. I think I might tweak it a little bit and focus more on the program versus in generalities, but hopefully you found some information here to be useful. And we thank you for considering City Teaching Alliance and your journey towards education. So I wish you all a very good evening and hope to see you come through soon. Have a good day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.